Welcome to Champagne Sunday. I'm Lauren.
Hey, I'm Bonnie.
I'm Beth.
And we're going to talk about life
After divorce.
And living
The best life.
and the life you love.
Yes, living the life you love on that other side.
Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome.
Well, just everything.
Okay, ladies, for this week, let's talk about assessing our strengths and our weaknesses and how we can make both work for us while we're creating this life that we love.
I would say when you are in a relationship with someone that isn't healthy, it's hard to assess those things. It's hard to be objective because of the toll it's taking on you emotionally, physically, like whatever. So when that ends, or at least I felt like after my divorce, it took a minute, but then I think I have been able to step outside myself a little bit and go, okay, what are we doing well? What are we not? You know, it's the ability to be objective about it.
Yeah.
You know,
I think also for me, it was an awakening of sorts. Like I knew during the marriage of 21 years, the responsibilities that I took and what things I did very well, what things I did but didn't like, what things I did but like if I had to think about them, the garage door as my brain went down because it was something I
Did not want
to do. I didn't feel comfortable doing, but it had to be done because I did a lot of the stuff by myself. When the divorce actually happened, it was almost like, okay, I've had years that I've been practicing all this stuff, and I'm not really that bad at it. The things that I didn't like doing, the things that you have to do because you're all by yourself. And I thought, even though I don't really enjoy doing them, I had built a little shelf of confidence about. I know I can do it. I might not do it perfectly, but I've had experience doing it. And so it was sort of like a springboard to the next, like, okay, now I'm going to really have to learn how to do this, this, and this. Because there is no excuse like.
Part of it is just self-efficacy.
It is.
And just like believing that you can.
Yes.
And
I think that's what, when I had done a few of those things that I didn't really like to do or I didn't think were my job to do in the marriage, but I had done them because nobody else was doing them, I think that did make me have more confidence that, okay, now that I really have to do them for real, for myself, it's different. And when you're doing them for yourself, to meet your personal goals, it's a whole different, shifts how you think about it.
When it's your space, like when you're living a single life, post-divorce, or a long-term partnership, and it's your job to take care of it, it's a different feeling.
It is.
Because two things, it's yours to take care of or nobody else will. And also you can't be criticized for the way you do it. And I think both of those things are equally important.
But I think the second one
is huge. It's huge for me.
Huge, but you don't realize that it's huge at the time until you have that, hey, I did this, or hey, I painted this room kind of blackish brown, and I really love it. And I don't have anybody going in here saying, why in the world would you pick that color?
Why isn't this a neutral?
Yeah, exactly.
I almost never cooked when I was married because I would face some kind of criticism about it, and most of it was about cleanliness while I cooked, like needing to, if anything was on the counter, I would get in trouble, like some kind of criticism. I know. And I cooked dinner tonight, and my partner is at my house, and he walked by while I was cooking dinner, and he's like, look at my woman cooking dinner. And I was like, oh my God, like I've never had that kind of, I've never felt like praised for that, or
Yeah.
Validated.
so validated at
Or
all.
you've never
I've
felt
certainly never felt
the
safe.
freedom and safety
freedom
just to
and
do
safety
it.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I don't cook every day, but like especially when I have my child, I try to cook dinner every time I have him. So anyway,
I just think also
that's kind of a big new. I never had self-efficacy about
Right.
cooking. Like I had not scrambled an egg till a couple years ago. I'm embarrassed to say, but I just wasn't. That's not my.
That's just not what
thing.
I don't love to cook either.
I
I can
think
do it. I just
I
don't
think it's
love it.
interesting too, how you were this person before you got married, and then when you get married, you have certain roles that you play, good or bad, in the marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you're single again, it's like you have this freedom. You can choose to do things or you can choose not to do things. And you can choose to think about things in a whole different way. I had a therapist that told me, Beth, you just need to, you're looking at the view this way, straight on. And if you use your artist brain and you shift, he used the word shift just a little bit to the left or right and look at the problem a different way, your brain is gonna
Hey.
your brain is gonna see it a different way and you're gonna think about it a different way. And it's true. I thought, oh, that's kind of BS,
Yeah.
that's psychobabble,
Yeah.
But then I started doing it just on little things. And well, as artists, especially visual artists, if you shift where you're sitting, if you're drawing a still life, or how you cast a play, if you shift,
Or how you
somebody
stage
sees-
it.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of opens up. It kind of fires a different neutron in your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Gives
you're
you a
like,
different perspective.
There's a different
Different
million different
perspectives,
perspectives
yeah.
that you can
and
have
you're-
for
it just changes
everything.
your whole perspective on things. And I started doing that, and I realized this guy was onto something. It was really kind of interesting. And then I started applying it to just everything, like feeding my dog with joy instead of like getting up and being like, oh, I gotta feed the dog.
Turning it to the positive.
Turning it to the positive side is kind of a kind of unique perspective. It's hard, especially after divorce, when you have those days, poor pitiful me, or I'm not gonna be able to pay this and this and this bill. It's hard to think that way, but you can. It's just like anything else. You can train yourself to think that way. I know that sounds a little Pollyanna, but it actually works.
Pollyanna.
No.
It actually
yeah.
works.
You have to, if you don't flip your thinking that way, you go down a dark road.
Yeah, so talking
And
about Pollyanna, my sister had a stroke. She had wasn't really a stroke. One of the veins on the back of her neck opened anyway, but it basically caused a brain bleed stroke kind of thing. And she was in a hospital. Well, she was overseas somewhere. I'll say Singapore, but I don't know for sure that's where it was. Anyway, so I couldn't speak to her, but she all the time because our time difference was all, and I couldn't get to her. Her husband was there with her, but she could not read anything. Her eyes wouldn't focus because one half of her, whole half of her body was, so she had no hand-eye coordination. Her eyes couldn't focus on anything. Everything had to be dark. The only sense that she still had was sound. And so every day we would play the glad game from Pollyanna. What are 3 things you can be glad about today? Let's start with, oh, thank God you're alive, and let's move on. But but it's that, so we play the glad game a lot when we're, like when we notice one or the other is getting in a dark place, it's like, it sounds like it's time for the glad game.
Yeah.
And it is so irritating to have to play it when you are not in a place to play it. But that's, being on the positive side, I think is huge.
It's important, I think, to remember that those moments are not the end of the world, though, that you
Yes.
really do have a positive world.
Yeah, well, where you are now is not where you're going to be tomorrow.
No. And it's easy to get bogged down when something bad happens, especially when things are going well or you're feeling good,
Yeah.
Well, and I think taking inventory of ourselves, good and bad. So I have learned at my age that I am most likely not going to change. That there are some things about myself that in my 20s, I was like, I will be hyper organized. I will get up early. I will do all of these things. I just need to mature. Okay, honey, at 52, I'm not going to get a whole lot more mature. these things are not going to happen for me. I am not ever really, I mean, I might start getting up early, but I'm not going to be a morning person. I am always going to procrastinate to the last minute. My ADD is going to have me going down squirrel trails left and right. So but I know these things about me now. So if I can take those things that I have seen in the past as negatives and kind of flip the thinking on them, like you were saying, Beth, and say, okay, I know I procrastinate. What can I do to help my future self when I hit that point where I go, oh my goodness, I have got to get this done? Are there any little things because I know I'll get it done. I always do. So I need to quit stressing out and getting to that point and just trust the fact that I have in the past always gotten it done.
Yeah.
And just move forward. So yeah, it just like taking that inventory of who I am and recognizing that at this advanced stage, if that personality trait has not morphed into something different, then it is something I need to take and use for my benefit instead of struggling against it.
I think recognizing that is
huge.
Yeah,
but
it's the first thing that you have to do.
It's absolutely
self-awareness.
recognizing what you're good at, what you're bad at, and giving. Sometimes you got to give more time to things you're like. I say to my actors all the time. Some of us are naturally gifted in ways that others aren't. Some of us have beautiful voices, and some of us don't. Like some of us are going to catch on to dances quickly, and some of us are just not. Some of us can memorize lines like that, and some of us cannot. And if you are going to be in this field, you have to recognize what you're good at, what you're bad at, and you're going to have to spend more time on the other thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I had one student whose desire is to be a triple threat. And she asked me, what do I need to work on? I said, it's your dancing. Like, you're going to have to spend more time on your dancing. And she started taking extra classes and has transferred to a musical theater program where, like, that's where she can do even more because that wasn't her thing. But she, like, took it to heart and went with it, recognizing that this is, if she wants to do this, this is something she needs to get better at. But there's absolutely no reason not to look at that in your life. Just in your general
just
life.
On the
and go,
things,
okay.
and the things
just
that,
on the daily, not even in my job.
No, and it's little things. Like, I don't get up early. I just don't. Morning is not, I will stay up and fight going to sleep for hours and hours. But getting up early, no matter what time I go to bed, is never going to be my strong
I'm the same way.
I know that in order for me to have a successful morning, that the night before, I need to choose my outfit. I need to decide what I'm going to. I need to make all of those morning decisions the night before. I learned that one early on. I'm not going to struggle against my mornings. I'm going to make all of those choices before I go to bed, so that I know I can play into the fact that I don't love to get up.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've always been really messy.
Oh, like, me too.
Organized in my head in terms of, I think the way my brain works, especially because of ADD, is that I really prioritize whatever the most immediate need is next. And part of it also is just like being a mom.
Yeah.
To some extent. So whatever the next thing is that I have to do is what I do. So I will put everything back until it's immediate. Mm-hmm. But being a messy human, after my divorce, I have become so much neater. Like because I don't know if I like stopped and recognized that, or if it just made me feel better for my home to be in.
But you also there's a whole human not leaving stuff around in your house anymore either.
That's true.
You're on when you walk around and it's just your stuff. And I was
actually talking to my sister who is also divorced, and her house is also like a lot more picked up, and I think again, it's your space and your space only, so it's your responsibility. You feel safer there, so you're there more often, and that's for sure true for me. I'm there more often, and it I don't know, it just makes me feel better. And I realized at some point in the last year that if I just do a little tiny thing every day, it will never mount up ever. Like,
well, I sort of have a theory on that, and I've read some stuff on that, but I was a gung-ho type A housekeeper for
Susie
years.
Homemaker.
I was Martha Stewart on steroids for years. And like I would sweep and mop my floor and pick up everything in my house as soon as my child went to bed, so that I woke up to a sparkling house in the morning. And then I had the breakdown in my marriage and the betrayal, and I had a counselor. I said, do I have to pick up his underwear? Do I have to do his laundry? Because I feel like he gave up that when he decided he made a choice. And I feel like I have a choice. And he said, you don't have to do any of that. You can do whatever you feel like doing. So then I went completely opposite and thought it was sort of like a little rebellion. Like, you did this to me and I feel awful, so I'm going to live in an awful state and I'm just going to do whatever I want to do because that's what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's very juvenile sounding, but I don't think I consciously made that. I just did that, and I lived in a mess. I lived in a mess for a long time.
Well,
And now that I have my own house, it doesn't bother me. I live with a teenager and a couple of animals. It doesn't bother me to have a little bit of dog hair and a little bit of backpack mess and where my child's had fun and we both do art.
Right.
And we have those kind of messes, but not like filthy method. You
right.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I've kind of reclaimed that area of my life. But my theory on that is when you have chaos in your life, you tend to have chaos all around you.
Right.
And when I had a chaotic part of my marriage, my house, you could walk into my house and it reflected it.
Yeah.
Like, there was no doubt that there was something not right going on there.
Yeah.
Now, I just have, like, a regular live-in, like, we live in my house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That I would say that that's how my house is
and I'm very
too.
comfortable with that now.
Well, and because like I tend to have a chaotic schedule, so I've what I'm starting to learn about myself at 43, is that if my space is chaotic with my chaotic schedule, I falter. Something's not gonna. But if my surroundings, if my safe space is camped, then I can do whatever I need to do because I can come back to order, you know.
Beth may have just spilled her
I
champagne.
think
and
it was all over.
What I was gonna say in response to what you said a minute ago is that when you're with a partner sometimes and there are things that need to be done, it's a standoff waiting for the to see who's gonna do it.
Oh, it
first.
reminds me.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Everybody Loves Raymond show?
Uh-huh.
Where they put a piece of stinky cheese in a suitcase at the bottom of the stairs to wait and see who would take it upstairs. Just like there was a standoff of who was going to do it. That's Because I remember when I stopped doing my ex-husband's laundry when we were married.
I stopped doing it
He
too.
He quit helping out and doing what I felt like was his part, so I quit doing what he felt like was my part, and it was not healthy.
No.
It should have been a conversation because I didn't have the other betrayal at that point in time going on. It was just something we couldn't necessarily get through.
But I think that's part of, you learn and you grow. I made a lot of mistakes. I'll be the first one to admit that. I think when you start admitting that you are human and you make mistakes and, a marriage is a lot of work. I think a lot of people go into marriage and they spend a lot of money on the wedding day to make it perfect. When really the bulk of your effort and money should go into the actual relationship
and the
and
setting up of the
development.
relationship.
Yes.
How are we going to deal with money? How are we going to deal
Yeah.
with household chores? How are
some
that
kind of
sort
hard
of thing?
how are we going to deal with
I don't-
when our
like,
parents start
it's-
getting involved in our
It's
life?
kind of incredible to me, like when you stop and think about it, the fact that two individual lives can come together and function together is kind of miraculous.
It is kind of miraculous.
It is, but it has
Given-
to be the right
given the fact that-
individuals.
Well,
yeah, but just for anybody
given the fact
to
that,
come
especially if you're an
together.
independent person, not a codependent person,
Mm-hmm.
because I think if you're codependent, it's pretty easy to fall into whatever somebody else is
But
saying.
if you're also
I don't know.
codependent, it very easily becomes unhealthy.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Having two healthy, independent people work together to have a relationship is much healthier than the codependent.
Yeah.
The I need you, can't live without you thing is
Yeah.
just hard.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot.
I think when you stop and you actually take a very honest inventory of what you're good at, what your triggers are. Triggers are a big thing.
Yeah, triggers.
What your triggers are, how you handle those, how you handle yourself in different situations, and then knowing what your expectations are. I think you come out of it realizing, I have a lot of stuff to work on. I have a lot of stuff that I'm good at, but I have a lot of stuff that I work on. And then I have this little pile of stuff that I'd rather pretend like I don't ever will have to address, or I don't ever really want to look at. But sometimes you just really have to, do it.
Mm.
Like this little pile over here that I don't want to deal with. I'm still doing the stuff from the trees and that real, like, in your face home ownership stuff. And
we haven't even started step 2.
that's
we
just
have.
one of
We
my-
need to
We
talk
have,
about
okay.
that in just a minute. We'll talk about that after we're done. Yes, Lauren, I have made progress.
Okay.
But I mean, some of those things, like, I know that I'm not good at negotiating with, like, people that come to your house to do a trade. I'm like, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
I just want it done, just do it.
But
not
I'm like
good at
that too. Just like get it done. Get it done.
So, my goal during the tree cleanup was to actually look at estimates, actually do the math, make myself better at negotiating with the insurance person, and having a little more patience with the process of trying to do those jobs that I did not want to have to do for the cleanup of the tree falling in my yard. So I do realize that I'm really bad at that, and I was trying to practice and being better and a better negotiator. Because when you're a homeowner, you at some point you have to face having a tradesperson come over, whether it's your garbage disposal or your dishwasher or your roof or your, a crack in your foundation or whatever, and you're gonna have to deal with it. So I just had to put on my big girl panties and like.
You mean you don't
make
just
myself-
tape over the hole that your daughter created in the den and
No.
put a trunk on top of it so
No.
nobody sees it? Like,
No.
other people don't, that's not a scenario in other people's lives? I don't understand.
No, I feel I was terrible, or I have been awful at negotiating.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And I have a friend who's very good at it. And recently, I plan a lot of trips because I take my students on trips. And I had a trip, or a travel agent recently that was like, that I was chaperoning the trip, so my trip is free, but my partner was going,
Right.
and so I needed to figure out his ticket situation, and I was just gonna have him buy it separately, and the travel company was like, go through us. And I was like, sure. And the travel company was like, it's gonna be $1,100. I was like, no, that's
Yeah, that's not-
I could buy it separately for him for that. So what you gonna do for me? And they were like, how about this? And then I was like, okay, I did it. I just negotiated. Because I was like, no. Only because I was like, no, that's not going to be good
But you
enough.
already knew. You'd already done your research.
Yeah. But again, I'm at a place, I'm at just a different place now that, like, if somebody says, no, we can't do it for that, I'm like, okay. All right, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I think
yeah.
making yourself.
I'm far less
sometimes-
scared of somebody
Yes.
saying no to me.
Yeah.
Oh,
than
I am
than
a
I
whole
was
lot less scared of that
before,
than I
yeah.
was before. I was so I don't think I was ever mousy, but I have definitely been non-confrontational to the nth degree.
It's
Like if
it's
it was
something
gonna
to
happen,
do.
I would just like
It's something to do with fear of rejection, and I don't know exactly to what extent, but I'm pretty sure that's what mine was too.
yeah.
Fear that somebody's not going to like you or not going to,
Yes, yes, and that's why I do miss having a partner to shove in those situations. Hey, could you please call or whatever? I mean, I do miss that, but I can do it, and I've, yeah, this tree situation has sort of forced that on us, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
yeah.
I've learned a lot doing this process, and
Yes, what I have learned is that in this repair insurance world, one day is actually 3 weeks.
Yes.
It is a different time scenario.
Yes.
it is.
And
That's
one day for them is actually like the guy came and got the front, so the crane that had to be positioned in front of my house crushed the sidewalk, the city sidewalk. So the
Listen,
guy
I
came
have to tell you
last
something
week.
so funny. my mother came home today, and she hasn't been home since anything happened.
Oh, that's
My mother,
right. Yeah.
And my mother lives next door to me, so it's Bonnie, me, and my mother. So my mother came out, and Bonnie has this
Crime
caution
scene
up,
tape.
and she goes, baby, who got murdered at Bonnie's house?
The sidewalk
got murdered.
I said, the cranes and the sidewalk out.
Yeah, so the guy came last week and took the old sidewalk out. And he came this morning and he put the little frame in to pour sidewalk, but didn't ever come back and pour it. So I assume that next week he'll come back.
It's a process.
I know it's a process. But it's just like this, okay, we're on that weird insurance time where one day is actually a week. So that happened last week. We'll just be a state, whatever. I mean, it's just kind of, I can't be frustrated. I can't lose patience because I can't control any of this. And they finally started working on my house to get it painted. And they worked for 2 weeks and they've quit for 2 weeks. I mean, like, they're still going to do it. It's just they haven't made any progress on it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay. It's just, at some point, I trust that my house will be painted someday, somehow, slowly. So just, I have no control over this.
Yeah.
Well, this has tried my patience. And that is in that, my patience is in that little bitty pile too. I'm not very good at that.
She did promise that she didn't pray for patience though, because that's a big mistake.
I did not pray for patience. I just prayed that I would.
Nobody needs more opportunities to learn patience.
And ride it out. And so far it's working. So.
Well, I think there's a lot of value in taking your negatives and trying to flip them to positives.
Well, I will say there's a lot of value in also viewing your positives and keeping your sense of humor.
Yes.
Well, you just have to laugh about it. I mean, it's going back to the day that the tree stuff happened, the whole week. We laughed so much about it.
Did.
I mean, it was trying, but it was actually a delightful week because it brought on different experiences than what we would have normally, which meant a little more time together at times too. So I don't know, you just have to take what you're given and take what you're given in terms of what you're good at and not too,
Yeah. That's
Which,
true.
and speaking on this, so our therapist was very irritating today.
Bonnie is now seeing my therapist. I don't know if anybody got this.
Yeah, because you didn't. Yeah,
she's amazing. I would say her name.
We've promised that we will not say her name.
We will not say her name.
Okay. But today we're talking about my procrastination issue, etc. And she said, "Well, that's clearly just who you are." Because I was talking about last weekend, I did not get as many things done as I wanted to. I procrastinated. I slept too much. I rested. I did some good things, but I didn't. And she was like, "Stop telling me what the things you did not do. Tell me the things you did do. I don't want you to say I should have ever again. It is, I got to do these things. I did do these, but I did not, that sort of thing." And I was like, okay. So it's reframing.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. I'm terrible at that. Because I think that we're really bad at thinking that we're supposed to do certain things with our day. Mm-hmm. When really, you don't have to do anything with your day except exist how you want to exist. And there's some judgment, and I don't know I have no idea if it's society or if it's the way we're all raised or if it's being Southern or American or whatever it is, or women or our common denominator. But it feels like often that if we're not doing something productive with our day, or that we value something valuable, or that someone deems as valuable with our day, whether it's us or some outside force, that it's not, that you didn't spend your time well. And that's just not a thing. That's not true.
Well, that's where I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
My year of resting, sleeping, those things that I did not put value on before.
But here's the thing, Beth. Nobody puts value on those things.
That's true.
It's
the Italians do.
Well, no, it's a European.
Can
we just say it is a European thing? And most of us came from them. What happened?
What happened?
What
Well,
happened?
I think that we might give lip service to recharging or taking care of ourselves or doing self-care, but the self-care that most people are talking about are like getting their hair done, getting their face done, getting their toes done, their nails, but they're not thinking of how can I relax and refresh, rest, and get ready for the next thing I have to do.
Yeah.
Well, so today the counselor said, you have to take some time today for self-care. I said, I'm doing that right now. She said, this doesn't count. This is working on your mental health. And that's great, but it doesn't count. And taking care of yourself, getting your nails done, things like that, that's not taking a break and take care. Yeah, that's maintenance. That's not taking care of yourself. But she told me this little story of calling her husband, and her husband called and said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm hanging out on the couch watching television and I'll be here till 4. And I stressed out. I was like, when I was in my marriage, if my husband had called and said, what are you doing? I would not have told him that I was laying on the couch watching television. That would have sent me into panic mode. I need to be doing more because I was a stay-at-home mom and he was working. And so for me to have any quiet time felt like I was slacking and not putting as much into our marriage and our success as he was.
You know, I had that pressure is what I want to call it. Like, what have you done all day?
Yes, and so I think we've been trained in some ways.
The funniest meme that I have ever seen is the husband walks in the door and says, you've been home all day, letting our house clean. And she says, you've been at work all day, why aren't we rich? And I thought, I wish I had seen that years ago. But you feel there's a weird pressure, and I don't know if it's self or if it's societal.
Well, and I don't know
if
that
you're a stay-at-home mom, I felt like my house had to be like you could eat off the floors. Like,
oh, I never felt that way.
I just felt like I had to do X amount of work in one day to prove my worth or validate why I was staying at home, or
but when she said that, and I'm not married, I don't have that pressure. But she's talking about her own marriage, and I had that panic, and I'm like, I'm still damaged by these things that I put on myself in marriage. This feel, I couldn't even do artwork unless I felt like it had some sort of intrinsic value, like a value that I could sell it, or I was going to put it on a wall, or I was going to gift it. I could not do artwork just for me to express myself and grow as an artist. To me, that was a waste of my valuable time in my marriage because I wasn't doing anything productive for the family in working on my art. And I wish I could go back and tell that person how wrong that is. That working on my art just for the sake of working on my art has such humongous value to me as a person, but that's not where I was. But I saw in that one thing when she said today, my panic over her having all of this freedom and peace in her marriage to be able to say, I'm hanging out on the couch watching television, I'm not getting up for 3 hours. What are you doing? I was like, but that's what I want. If I have another partnership, that's the partnership that I want. But it did show me that I am still a bit damaged from the way I was, I guess the way marriage trained me to be, whether it was him or whether it was me putting that on myself.
Can I just say it's been a weird 100 years for women?
Yeah.
It's been a weird 100 years for women because we didn't have a place we didn't have a voice in society to what year were we allowed to vote? 1919?
19, but then in Alabama it was much later. It was in the 30s, 40s.
Was it
But
that
you
late?
couldn't have your own credit card till 1972.
I
There
I
you
was
go.
in second grade.
And when could you own your own? When could you own your own land? It depended on the state.
It was the state.
There were a lot. Like, okay, as an example, my grandmother, her father's family would not give him any land because he had 5 daughters, and because daughters could not inherit the land, so he had to work his wife's family's land because he had no one to inherit it.
I think as a result, modern women who are professionals, but also still have the stigma or the desire to, or just the place of being moms and wives and, you know, our place in society as women versus the professional, I don't even know the place that we also have access to now, that it's such an unrealistic expectation to do both of those things to 100%. I don't know, like, can we just say men don't have the same expectation on them? They don't. Like, they have professional expectations, but they don't have the same kind of taking care of the home expectation that women do.
Well,
and
okay,
I think that's
and
just true.
I don't know if it's better or if it's worse, because what I found out being single, divorced woman, I played the role of mother and father. I played the role of breadwinner and the soft space to land, the nurturing.
Oh yeah, I do too,
homemaker
because
person.
my ex-husband died, so my kids only have me.
I don't know if that's where the rub is on why I feel like I couldn't rest, or I didn't deserve to sit on the couch and watch TV, or I think I told y'all I didn't even lay on my couch until recently. Like I had never just wallowed on my couch. I just hadn't done it. I mean, that's
I'm
just
a walla.
that's just what I did, and I think that recognizing that in myself, that is not a weakness to have to rest and recharge.
It is a necessity.
And to put that in a top priority for me was a huge breakthrough.
Okay, question. Did your husband do that ever?
What?
He napped.
Just lay on the couch.
He napped.
Oh,
he didn't
all
nap
the
on the
time.
couch.
Did yours?
All the time.
Did mine? Yes. So we are all
I
acknowledging
never
the
laid
fact
on the couch.
that we feel guilty
over
for
doing something he was doing.
any kind of time that isn't devoted to job, child rearing, or doing something productive at our homes. And that is absurd.
Yes. Okay, I just looked it up. The 19th Amendment was not ratified in Alabama until 1953.
I mean, we're not even talking about 100 years. We're talking 70? 70 years, right?
Yeah, so that's,
No.
just, I mean.
53 is 88. No, it's not. It's.
Wait.
I can't even do math.
Let's do math.
Did you say 53?
53.
93.
Yeah, so
13, 23, 70 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all, that's not even a whole person's lifespan. That's so recent.
No.
So I don't mean to sound extremist, but our generation of women are a little bit pioneers in terms of this balancing act.
We are.
Because it's a balancing act, but it's an expectation.
And we are 3 different generations, aren't we? Did we figure
not
that
quite.
out? Well, yeah,
Not
I think
quite.
we are. Yeah, because what are you?
I'm on the cusp of
And
X and
I'm smack down. I'm Gen X.
And I'm the last year of the baby boomers.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're 3 different generations, but we're all 3 kind of in the same thing.
Yeah.
So isn't that but having that perspective, resting, I love that we are all able to do that now and recognize the value. I think part of what has driven me recently is the fact that I've realized I am 52. My perspective has changed from I have all of this time in the world to my time is running out. It's like I got to the top of the hourglass, and now it's, instead of it filling up, now it's flipped over and it's draining out.
At 43, I feel like that recently. Like, I've been cleaning nonstop, like trying to get rid of things, because I've kind of reached a point that I'm like, all right, financially, we're never going to be at any kind of level, so we can't keep up with the Joneses. So like, let's figure out what my house is going to look like, etc. So I've been getting rid of things I don't need, and a friend of mine was like, why are you cleaning out? Like, are you moving? And I said, no, I'm going to die. And I can't remember if I said this. I can't remember if I said this on a podcast or not, but I was like, I'm going to die eventually, and I don't want that responsibility for my kid, but like, I recognize the simpler that I live, the better it's going to be for me.
Yes.
Again, as a mom, as a professional
and
woman,
as a busy person
who
has to be the one. My sister comes to my house My sister has lived all over the world, so she moves every 2 years. So she cleans things out every 2 years. And she went into my closet and was like, you got to get rid of some clothes. Like, this is, why are you having to why do you have a whole basket of socks? Like, she's looking at my stuff going, this is a things problem, not a you have time problem. You've accumulated all of these things and you haven't been, but I just haven't had the natural, she has the gift, I guess, of being able to move every 2 or 3 years. She cleans everything out. I haven't had that gift.
Right.
So it's just.
But I think too, like, the cleaning of the house, the taking care of the house, the
I'm no longer a
all
hoarder.
that is not a woman problem. And I think that kind of thing gets shoved on us so easily historically. When
I
really
agree.
it's a family situation, and like even my child needs to contribute to that. But just because I'm gonna call it out, just because a man has a job doesn't exempt the man from everything else that they have to do in life.
No.
Like, again, I have always had a job. I've never been a person without a job. But even when I was on maternity leave, for example, it doesn't exempt the other human from, like, acknowledging the child. You know what I mean? I mean, not to...
But it did. Did it? In my marriage, it did exempt him from doing a lot of the things. He wanted the 1950s life. I wanted to give it to him to whatever extent that I could. I just could never get to the level he and I never jived on what it was that our marriage should be. Does that, so yeah. I don't know.
I felt very alone and
I wish TikTok had been a thing 15 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of these things I see on TikTok, I'm like, yeah. But I mean, it doesn't help me now. But anyway,
there's a lot. I feel like there's still a lot to unpack here, but
good thing we can get together again.
Yeah.
Okay. So if y'all listen, hey listeners, on Spotify has this cool little thing where you can go and answer a question that has to do with the podcast. So I think our question for this one, kind of wrapping things up and bringing things back around to the front, is: have you done an inventory? And if you have you found a negative that you've been able to turn into the positive? And if so, what positive have you been able to find? So I just think that would just help me, I know, and just seeing how other people have been able to turn their negatives into positives and Pollyanna themselves. It just helps us build a better life that we love. So anyway, if you just on Spotify, run over to Spotify and answer that for us.
I'm going clink.
Yes, clink, clink.
Clink.
Love y'all. So glad to see you. Thanks y'all for joining us this week. If you listen to us on Spotify, be sure and check out a question we've asked this week. What is one of your weaknesses that you have been able to turn into a positive? We'd love for you to have you fill it out and kind of give us some feedback. Y'all have a great week. Thank y'all for joining us for Champagne Sunday.
See you next week, girls.
See you next week. Yeah, cheers.
Have a good week.
Cheers.
Cheers.